Well, hey, everybody. How's it going? Happy Friday. All right, I can see that Nightbot is acting a fool for no reason, and I don't know how to fix that. So I don't know what it's doing. I don't know how to make it not do that. I'm not sure how to work it. That all I wanted it to do was to be able to make it where um nobody had to drop links, like if somebody asked for the membership link, or like if somebody asked if I had a PayPal or something like that. I was trying to be helpful, but this thing has now been ridiculous, and I don't actually know how to I have to get my son to do it. So just ignore Nightbot. I don't know how to control it. So sorry about that, you guys. Yeah. It's another fun Friday at the Ward. So I wanted to also say, Molson, man, you did a fan friggin' tastic job Wednesday. Very, very proud of you. You did excellent. It's a fascinating case for many, 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 many reasons. It's a sad case, but it's also fascinating because it seemingly comes, out of nowhere. And I'm looking forward to more episodes that you guys do. So yeah. Um, so this is what I was thinking. Obviously, I shouldn't be thinking, because thinking leads me to do things like let Nightbot be in here, and then Nightbot goes rogue, and now I have it's always with the friggin' timing out of people. What is it with this channel that everybody gets timed out? That's like the first, you know, you're welcome, Molson, man. That's just, well, I guess I don't know. I'll have to ask my son how to do it, but I don't want to take it away because I don't I I don't want to have to drop links, but I'll fix it. Hey Mo. All right, so let me say hi to everybody. Who we got in here tonight? Let's see. We got Kez Chick. Hello. Molson Man. Hello. Cement Shoes. Hello. Vincent's Missing Ear. Hello. Tony, are the first victim of Nightbot. Hello. Welcome. Welcome. Who else do we have in here? That's me. That's me. I don't want to miss any. Allie, Chick Tracy. Hi, guys. Think I Allie 79, Amelia Sparkles. Hello, Crackling Rosie True Crime. Hey, Aussie girl Jen. Welcome back. Welcome back. Good to see everybody. I think I got it for everybody. I think I did. Max 2002. Hello. Cement shoes. Yeah. Yeah. That case, whew, that one's coming up. Okay. So, hi, everybody. It's so good to see you guys. Thanks for coming. Thanks for being patient with me. I'll get these little hiccups worked out. But what I was thinking is, um, low key, I'm kind of tired of Ezra. I'm annoyed at the whole thing at this point. And so, what I thought we would do tonight is to hear the closing arguments, and then there may be a roast on Saturday. I'm not 100% sure yet. Hey, Anita, good to see you. It's been a long time. Oh, no. I hope you feel better. Ouch. Ouch, ouch, ouch. So, yeah, there may be a roast on Saturday night. I'm working on it. We'll see. But for sure, the Depp Heard defamation trial is Monday. It's all a go. So I definitely want to get started on that. And then obviously Anthony Tote is going to be right in there too. And both of those, so these are both fascinating cases for multiple reasons. And I decided that um, you should be able to, Max 2002, you should be able to. You should Google and find out. But I think you should because, um, I mean, people from Australia are in the chat and they're watching US, YouTube from the United States. I'm in the United States. So you should be able to. I don't see why you wouldn't. I don't know if you need those adapter thingies though for the plugs. I don't know how that goes. Oh, thank you so much, Cement Shoes. I'm working on a video for it. So I'm kind of excited about it because, you know, I do really like Johnny Depp. But I will say this. I'm open to hearing the evidence. But on the flip side of that is my other opinion, which is first of all, this isn't two people like me and you, right? Regular people filing a defamation lawsuit. This is one of Hollywood's elite at this point. And Johnny Depp did work his way to get there, right? He put in the work. He did a lot of, stuff. And when he first, it is what it is. So I'm going to leave it at that. So, this is Hollywood elite being Johnny Depp, and then Amber Heard, who also, I mean, she's famous as well, battling it out. And, it's not even criminal court where there's like, I mean, I know there's rules, obviously, in a defamation lawsuit, but, it's different because defamation goes to the fact that his allegation is that the things that she said publicly hurt his income. And they did because he was fired from well, it's not really Harry Potter, but it is Harry Potter. It's the Fantastic Beasts series. And then he was fired from the Pirates of the Caribbean. So her statements did have a negative effect on his income. And what I'm thinking is that he must be pretty sure about what he's got as evidence in order to do this. And vice versa. She must be pretty sure about what she's got to be taking it to court because they could have settled this. This is going to be public. It's different than it's one thing. All court is public. You can get, and that's, anybody can, well, you have to win a seat, obviously, for trials like this, but you know what I'm saying? Anybody can go and watch a trial if they want to. It's open for the public. Obviously, the C word has given us new restrictions, but generally speaking, um, you know, um, anybody can go watch. But not only is it, going to be, is it allowed for the public to view, obviously, in person, right? Now it's going to be streamed. And that opens it up to the world, really, if you think about it, because anybody could watch it if they wanted to. And that means all of all of the dirty laundry is coming out. So I'm very curious about what they're going to be presenting. Hey, Shamida. I know you're sick. I hope you feel better soon. Hold on, let me read what Max is asking. When I travel and I open YouTube, I see other YouTube creators. I don't see my subscriptions. Huh. I I've never traveled out of, I mean, I've traveled out of the United States, but I haven't traveled out of the United States since the invention of the internets. So I have no idea um, about that. I wish I could help, but I don't know. So the whole layout is different? I don't know. So, I'm sorry that I couldn't be helpful. But yeah, I'm very curious about what all is going to come out in this deposition, or not deposition, defamation lawsuit, because um, I think that no, there's really going to be no winners here. If you think about it, right? If it's proven that Amber Heard lied, because that's part of it. What she said has to be untrue. So if it's proven that she lied, oh, Max, it makes my heart happy. Um, oh, you know what? Tony's right. Do that. What Tony said. Hold on. Let me highlight that. See how I can't do too many things at once. This is why I can't be looking at the chat and talking, because then I oh my goodness. Anyway, there's not going to be any winners in this case if you think about it, because let's say that it's proven, it goes in Johnny Depp's favor, right? And the jury finds that she did, she is guilty of defamation, right? Well, that means that she she lied, and it hurt his career, and he was a pariah for a while, right? Because of it. And you really can't undo that damage. And then on top of it, now we have her, if that's what ends up happening, right? Then we have her um lying about DV, which is never ever a good idea. You know what I'm saying? Nobody wins from that kind of a lie. It sets victims back. And it's already hard enough to be a victim. And that's another thing I was thinking about, Aussie girl Jen. Okay, let's think about this. Her earning potential. Should he win, he can't be realistically. This I don't I find this has to be more about clearing his name in the public than it is about the money. First and foremost, she doesn't make as much as he does. Second of all, this whole thing impacted both of their careers negatively, both of them, right? To I don't know how to fix that, Aussie girl Jen. I'm so sorry. I don't care if you spam with emojis. I don't know how to fix that. When I start the I know you guys, I'm sorry. When I start the stream, I'll go get when I for Ezra, I'll go get my son and have him fix it for me. Okay. So but anyway, oh, here we go. Now you're really going to set Nightbot off. There's got to be some kind of something. Let me see what this is. Um, I have no idea how to fix this. Oh, maybe this. Here we go. Ah, let me just disable this. There we go. I fixed it. Oh, wow. All right, I fixed it. Okay. Sorry about that, you guys. Okay. I fixed it. Look at me. I'm so smart. I didn't even need help. I figured it out. So, bottom line is, um, Mo, yikes. So, oh my gosh, look what it wrote to Vincent to cement shoes. I turned all that off. This is, I think, Nightbot has been around a while, but most people use it for like Twitch, and you know how it gets over there. So, yeah, I fixed it now. I fixed it. I don't appreciate Nightbot being so aggressive, asking if you want to dance. So rude. Anyway, bottom line is this. He can't be doing it for money because she doesn't make as much money as he does. And should she lose, right, then her earning potential goes down significantly, right? Okay. So he can't be doing this for money. He has to be doing, it only makes sense for him to be doing this uh, so publicly because he wants to clear his name in public. So it took me like 87 years to get to the point because of all of my distractions. Because, yeah, let's suspend Nightbot, Molson, man. Don't even give Nightbot a report card, just straight expulsion. And I can't wait to see that trial. So um, I'm looking forward to it. I'm keeping I will say this. I do have some preconceived notions, obviously. Who doesn't? I'm human. But I I think I told you guys this. I watched Closing Arguments with Ali 79's husband, Vinnie Politan. And some of the things that were shown made me tilt my head ever so slightly. Um, so yeah, I'm curious. So yeah. Anyway, let's oh yeah, yes, you are. I know you are. I would never, never, never. I believe in girl code, Ali 79. I would never try to steal Mr. Politan away from you. I know how much you adore him. You called dibs a long time ago. Um, but yeah. So I'm really looking forward to this trial because I from what I understand, I believe the bulk of the um, evidence is going to center around this photograph. So I'm very curious about that. Uh, so let me get to what I need to get to. But yeah, I'm excited for that trial. And I'm also I'm not excited. I don't like to use that word for the tote trial, but I'm anxiously anticipating it because I think it's going to be a very sad yet fascinating trial. So anyway, What we're gonna do tonight is listen to the closing arguments because, I'm over it. Holy moly. This might have to be a two-parter, y'all. So listen to this. The prosecution is an hour and 59 minutes, 13 seconds. All right. Brace yourselves. The defense, 2 hours, 36 minutes, 56 seconds. Then there's a rebuttal. The prosecution rebuttals. Um, then obviously the verdict, and then we'll listen to all the, I think we can squeeze in the verdict. Holy guacamole. We'll figure it out. Then there's the verdict, and then there's victim impact statements, and then there's defense impact statements, and then there's the sentencing. So we cannot be monkeying around, and we got to get straight to it. Fired from okay. How do you get fired from from jury duty? I mean released? Wow. Well, look, that's her job, right? That's how she makes her income. And hey, Christine Elizabeth, good to see you. And I want to say I want to tell you I wanted to say hi to your husband, but I feel like if I say hi to your husband for me, that's going to come out all kinds of wrong, even though I know you know that's not how I mean it. But I'm trying to think of a better way to say that, but there is no other way. So I know how to say it. Hi, Christine Elizabeth and Christine Elizabeth's husband who watches me as well. They watch together. That sounds nicer, less, like, antagonistic, I think, but yeah. Well, no, because if you think about it, Allie, like, it's not that she needed the nookie, it's that that's her job. Like, a sugar daddy is the income, so she couldn't get time off for her employer. Yeah. Hold on a second, let me now I gotta scroll back up because I've lost my place. Oh, here we go. Alright, hold on, because it's gonna start playing even though I don't want it to play. Alright. I don't know, um, I don't know Vincent's missing ear because, that's bananas to me, like, that's a long ass time to be or this I always make it weird, Amelia, are you new? Have you met me? Oh god. I didn't wanna make it weird, but it just happened. "Hi, Nonstop Mom." Oh, look, first comment out of the at the gate, and Nonstop Mom is already spiced up. So, yeah. I'm sorry I made it weird for you, Christine Elizabeth. Now I'm all awkward. But anyway, let's move past that. And let's just get started. And I'm gonna make it go. I'm gonna turn the speed up. Um, because it's got awkward. real quick. All right, hold on. Let me add this to the stream. All right, ready, go.
Court, counsel, ladies and gentlemen of the jury.
I'm going to put it at 1.5.
With the defendant, there's always just one more lie. Just one more lie. And that's, ladies and gentlemen, really what this case is about. Is the defendant telling...
Please be seated. You can continue. Your objection is preserved.
This case is about whether the defendant is telling the truth, whether the story is the truth or not. Because if the defendant's story is not true, the defendant is guilty. Guilty of first-degree intentional homicide of Alex Woodworth on March 22nd. I'd like to start the closing argument with a discussion of what's not at issue in a case. Ladies and gentlemen, there's no question in this case. There's no doubt at all.
Oh, I love you guys too. You know I'm awkward as hell. I'll be the first to admit that.
The defendant killed Alex Woodworth on March 22nd, 2018, when she repeatedly stabbed him. And there's no real question that that action was intentional, ladies and gentlemen, that she intended to cause Alex Woodworth's death. Now you may say, wait a minute, she testified, she said, I didn't intend to, I didn't want to kill him, I didn't plan to kill him, I didn't intend to kill him. But that's not the issue. Because as the judge told you just a little while ago, intent is not just what the person in their mind plans. That's one part of intent, right? That's one way you can prove intent.
Okay, just really quick. I'm invested in it, right? But I'm actually more invested in the appeal now. I get the gist of the trial. I'm good. Now I want to see what she's going to base her appeals on.
If they say, yes, I wanted to kill that person, that proves intent. But intent is also proved if we can show, and if the evidence shows, that a reasonable person at that point in time knows that their actions are practically certain to cause the death
Judge,
of the individual.
Not the law. Objection. That is not the law. Page 5 says the law. That's not the law. Objection. Can we approach?
Your Honor, the law is if the person knows that it's practically certain to cause death, that is intent.
That's not what he said. Can we approach, Judge? He misstated the law.
Your Honor, this is argument.
All right, this is argument. It's overruled. Your objection is preserved. Make your record after the argument.
And when the defendant stabbed Alex 16 times, she knew her actions were practically certain to cause Alex Woodworth's death. And when she left Alex Woodworth there, taking his phone so that he has no way of getting help, she knew her actions were practically certain to cause Alex Woodworth's death.
Have a good time. Chick Tracy. I love it. Chick Tracy.
It's not about whether the defendant killed Alex Woodworth. It's not about whether the defendant intended to. It's whether you believe the defendant's story her most recent story, that she was acting, she was afraid. That's what this case is about. If you don't believe that story, then the state has proven beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant intentionally killed Alex and that she did not act in self-defense. And she is guilty of first-degree intentional homicide.
She's been straight mean mugging this whole time. Just wanted to throw that out there.
In deciding whether or not her story is true, you've got to look at her evolving story. Because her story evolves as time goes on. What's her first story? What's her first story about what happened? It's what she tells Officer Reeves and medical staff at Mayo. This happened at Owen Park. I don't know how I got to Menominee. I don't know how I got to Dunn County. This happened at Owen Park. And that's important, ladies and gentlemen. It's important for a variety of reasons. But not the least of those reasons is it's important because when you use your common sense, you know why she's lying about it happening at Owen Park. And you know why someone who's being questioned by police and others about what happened would lie about what happened. Your common sense tells you that. And the judge just instructed you. It's one of, I think, it's a very short instruction, but it's one of the most important ones. And that's instruction number 195 that says, essentially, when you're deliberating,
Rubberhead, good to see you.
Consider your experiences in the ordinary affairs of life. And what that, ladies and gentlemen, really is, it's the instruction that says, you walk through this door over here, you go back to the jury room, ladies and gentlemen,
read this one.
Check for common sense at that door. You use your common sense. And what does your common sense tell you about why someone's going to lie to a law enforcement officer? Your common sense tells you it's to avoid getting charged with a crime. It's to avoid getting in trouble. Why is the defendant lying and saying it happened at Owen Park? She doesn't want them to go back to the scene. She doesn't want law enforcement to go back by Don Simple's house and find that muddy road where Alex Woodworth lies dead. She doesn't want them to go back there because she needs to be able to get back there and clean it up, get rid of Alex's body before law enforcement finds it. That's why she's lying about it. That's why she's misdirecting them over to Owen Park. And ladies and gentlemen, I know you just heard a couple days ago from Dr. Hopper, and he talked about matters that are encoded and problems when stress events. But it's important when we're thinking about this and thinking about this lie here, that we think about where that lie and what events that lie is about. Remember all that stuff? He showed you that chart, and it's got the line where the stress starts. And that's where memory starts to work a little bit different. It's when that stress starts. And before that, memory just encodes like it normally would, and your memories are going to be like they normally are. And that stress event, assuming that that stress event even happened, or assuming that that stress event, the stress event could be, as Dr. Hopper said, being involved in a murder, that stress has not happened yet when she's pulling into that muddy driveway. There isn't any issue with her memory at that point in time, and yet she's saying it happened at Owen Park. She can direct them away, so she can go back later and clean it up. Her story evolves from there to, I don't remember anything. I don't remember anything. Even on March 23rd and March 24th, when she's interviewed by Detective Prock, when from her own story that she told you on the stand, her memory had come back, she's still saying, I don't remember anything. She doesn't want Detective Prock or any other law enforcement officer to go back to that scene. She wants them to stay focused on Owen Park. And finally, when she's confronted with the facts, when she's confronted with information, Detective Prock is talking to her in a calm voice, talking to her in a friendly manner, confronts her and says, look, you find your car. You walked down that muddy road and found your car. What do you think we found? And now she's got to go to plan B. Plan A is, Alex attacked her, he took off with my car, don't know where anything is, don't know where he's at, don't know anything about it. She's got to go to plan B and say he was attacking her there, and then she stabbed him. And now all of a sudden, all those facts that, again, using Dr. Hopper's description, are the facts that are super encoded, the central details of what happened. Come out.
I'm upset that he's
The story
using.
has to evolve even more, and it evolves into the story she told here.
We don't even get to
The
see
story
that.
she told them. It's not the same story she told. We need to take a look at and consider what the defendant does when she leaves Alex's apartment. Remember, testimony from everybody is that they were going to leave Alex's and they were going to go to someplace public. They were going to go to someplace
Bob.
where they could talk, be around other people, so there wouldn't be any issues. Well, what do we know about what the defendant actually did as she drove away? We know, ladies and gentlemen, that she's right here, Alex's apartment. She knows there's Half Moon Park right here. There's Phoenix Park right here, a couple blocks away. There's Owen Park that she talked about right here, real close to Racey's, where she wants to be. Does she go to any of
nonstop,
those
Mom. You're
public
great.
places?
Thank
Does she go
you.
anywhere near them? No.
I want a
She takes-
picture. Sure do.
Drives straight out of town. Cameron to Madison, it all just changes names and drives straight out of town, away from the public, away from a location where she can be with other people as she talks to Alex. Because her purpose is not to talk to Alex, her purpose is to confront Alex. And we're going to talk about that in a while when we talk about the defendant's motive. Her purpose is to confront and get Alex to change his mind about the relationship and admit, as she put it, that the relationship was a mistake. She needs to confront him, and she needs to confront him someplace away from people. What about, and you may have forgotten about,
What
Dan
is
Davidson,
he doing? The hokey
who testified
pokey? What the
fairly
hell was
early in the
that?
trial. But what does he tell you about what he sees? What he sees is important for two reasons. It's important because it contradicts the defendant's story, and it also helps to fill in the timeline of what happens. Because Dan Davidson, a bus driver at the time for Beauclair, Person trained to make observations of other drivers so that he can make sure what they're doing, to watch them, to look at their eyes. Tells you he sees a car stopped in the road, pointed at this road.
I'm going to quit the internet.
New York's property. And he sees two people in there and he sees a woman driving. Defendant confirms, yeah, I remember somebody driving around me. So the defendant confirms that in fact this happens. And Dan Davidson tells you clearly it's a woman, not Alex, but the defendant obviously driving that car. I know defense is going to say something like, well, how does he know? And, he doesn't write that clearly in his statement and so forth. But what reason does Dan have to come here and lie to you? That's what he remembers. He has no interest in this case. In fact, he only became involved because he saw law enforcement searching along the ditches there, and he just decided to stop and, hey, there's this kind of weird thing that happened a couple days ago. Just thought I'd tell you about it. Doesn't have an interest in it.
I just want to take a time to point out that Allie 79 and myself do not completely 100% agree with this prosecutor's theory of motive. We think ours is better. That is all.
Clearly. But what else is interesting about that, and what else is strange about that, is remember the defendant's story on the stand. Well, I thought this would be a nice place to go to talk. A nice place to go to talk? Certainly not a public place. Certainly not a place that looks like a good place to talk where other people are going to know. It's private property. It's a deserted area. It's a middle of a farm field. Is that the place you go to discuss continuing to be friends with Alex? Talk more about your relationship with Alex? A place to talk about what's happening at Reese's? Or is it a place to go and confront Alex? A place where nobody else is going to see what's happening. That's, ladies and gentlemen, what this looks like. A lot more than a place to talk about the relationship. So what happens after they start pulling into there? The car gets stuck the first time. Now, ladies and gentlemen, realistically, and again, this is before, as Dr. Hopper tells you, that the amygdala kicks in and you start reacting based upon instinct, habit, those types of things. This is when you still have rational thought. And the defendant still has her rational thought about her. And what does she decide to do? The rational thought is you're on this muddy road and you're starting to get stuck. If you get stuck, rational thought says, I'm going to back out of here and get out of here before I get stuck so that I can't get out. That's what your rational thought tells you if you're just trying to find a convenient place to stop and talk. Despite the fact that there were probably hundreds of places to conveniently stop and talk where there are other people around. But if you want to get to the location where you, over that hill that you heard about, to where you can't be seen from the road, so you can confront someone and confront them and make them do what you want. You want to keep going, you want to move forward, you want to go over that hill and get away from where everybody else is. And that's what the defendant chooses to do. And once they get stuck, the rational thought is, let's get some help. It's going to have to get out of there sometime, and you're going to have a tow truck someday or sometime. Just because it's going to cost some money, rational thought is we need to get out of here unless you still need to confront him. And he'd do that before anything else happens. Now, as I said at the start, this case turns on whether you believe the defendant's story or not. And I want to talk about why the defendant's story is not believable, why the defendant is not credible. There's 5 areas that I want to cover when I talk about that. I want to talk about the lies that she's admitted that she made. Things that she told you or told others were clearly lies. And not, as Dr. Benson talked about, lies of omission, but rather lies of commission, lies where she intentionally deceived someone knowing what she said was false. I want to talk about lies that are proved from the evidence. In other words, lies that, based on other testimony, other evidence, were clearly things that she said that are lies. I want to talk about inconsistencies in her story. And I'm going to talk about inconsistencies not in these peripheral details about things that happened after a stress event, but rather inconsistencies either before that stress started. In other words, changes she made to her story before the stress event happened, or inconsistencies in central facts, as Dr. Hopper talked about that. Fourth, I want to talk about how the physical evidence, the things that don't matter based on person's memory, don't matter based upon how people think about things don't matter on whether you believe someone or not, but physical facts, evidence from the scene, evidence that we've uncovered, and how that physical evidence contradicts the defendant's story and says the defendant's story is not true. And finally, I want to talk about the DNA evidence and how the DNA evidence also, which is another form of physical evidence, another form of physical facts, how that evidence also contradicts the defendant's story. So what lies do we know that the defendant told? We know she lied about how Boy got scratched into her arm right here, this large area of her arm, how that happened. We know she lied about who did that. We know she intentionally lied about it. We know she intentionally lied about it because she admitted she intentionally lied about it on March 24th. Because on March 24th, when the defendant was interviewed by Ryan Prock, she told him, first in that interview, that Alex did that, and later admitted, again, when confronted by the truth, when confronted by facts that dispute her story, she changed her story and admitted, yes, I lied. I'm the one that did that. Why lie? Why misdirect law enforcement and try and point them over in this direction when you know they should be in this direction? You lie because you're covering up. You're covering up for what you did wrong. She lied about going to Owen Park. She knew, she admitted on the witness stand that she knew she didn't go to Owen Park when she said that. But she lied about it. Misdirected law enforcement. She lied about going to Racy's first because, and the reason why that's important, it may seem like a small detail, but the reason why it's important is she doesn't want law enforcement to know how important it is to her that she talked to Alex that day. But that was the reason why she went against her father's wishes and drove to Eau Claire. That's why she went and found the keys that her father had hidden so she could drive to Eau Claire that day. That's why she went to Eau Claire that day despite not telling Jason the night before in their Instagram messages that she was going to Eau Claire that day. Because she needed to confront Alex. I'll talk more about that in a little while. But she didn't want law enforcement to know how important that was. So she said, I went to Racy's first. And changes that story when she's confronted with the facts, when she sees this evidence that shows she's there first. She's at Alex's first. And then her story changes. And she lied when she told Ryan Prock multiple times on March 23rd and March 24th that she can't remember until she's finally confronted with what law enforcement knows. And at that point in time, admits, all right, you got me, but this is what happened. I also want to spend a minute talking about her evolving story or her changing story on where she was when she scratched Boy into her arm. Because in the course of just a few minutes of her interview on March 24th, her story changes on that. And her story changes because initially she tells Ryan Prock that she's sitting in the car when she does that. And just a few minutes later, 2 pages later in the transcript of that interview, she says, oh, I did it on the road because I did it right after I fell down and the phone broke. So I was on the road when I scratched Boy in my arm. And her story changed yet again, moved again when she got up on the stand. And her story then became, I did it when I was by the back of the car. That's another example of her story having to evolve and change. Because by then she knew about the DNA evidence. She knew what Kevin Scott had found with DNA. And she knew that Kevin Scott had found her blood, her DNA on the trunk of the car. So now her story has to evolve and change to show why her blood is going to be on the trunk of the car. So now it changes to, I scratched Boy in my arm when I'm by the trunk. It changes, it evolves. She can't keep her story straight. Every time she's caught in a lie, her story changes. Owen Park, caught in a lie, she's not there. I can't remember. Caught in a lie that we found her car. Her story changes.
Her penmanship is terrible also.
You know, her story isn't that great as far as self-defense when all Alex is doing is, making some really superficial scratches on her and wanting to look at her. Her story changes. He's trying to sexually assault her. She's confronted with facts. She's confronted with the truth. Her story evolves. And her story changes. That's not someone.
Oh, that's a good question,
That's
Nonstop
someone
Mom.
who's trying just one more
Hold
lie.
on, let me look.
Just one more lie to get all that.
Could you move, Mr. Prosecutor, so I can see?
Cold-blooded killing of Alex Woodworth. on March 22nd.
That looks white, not yellow.
We also have lies that are shown by the evidence in this case, ladies and gentlemen. She told you, your story is that this knife, right here, this EMT knife was used to murder Alex Woodworth. That this knife was given to her by Joe Shane Carlin, her father. That's her story. Joe Shane, when he's talked to by law enforcement, including investigator Kowalczyk, says, I didn't give her a knife.
I've
And
never
specifically
seen,
this
hold on
EMT
a
knife, he
minute.
says, I bought 2 of these. I just bought 2 of these.
Pardon me.
from Amazon.
I've never seen a trial where the murder weapon was presented in diorama form. Have you guys? I've never seen that done before. Usually they hold up the actual murder weapon, but this is in I don't know if that's a diorama or a shadow box, but either way, it's better than the 87 miles of poster board with 1 mile of poster board used. Can't even see what they're trying to show us. And then this time it was turned completely away. So rude.
Amazon. And he finds this one, the exact match to that knife. Finds this one in his living room where it was supposed to be. It says, yeah, the other one should be in my junk basket in the kitchen or out in the truck. And he goes to look for those. He goes to look for it in those locations and he can't find it. He can't find it because this knife right here is lying in the ditch just before Sipple's daughter's driveway. The defendant put it. And if he had actually given this knife to the defendant, why is he looking for it? He didn't. She was going to take it.
Amelia, was that a typo, babe?
Well,
Did autocorrect get you? I want to highlight it, but I'm
and she lied about Max Parkinson and the painting that she was giving Max. Remember, she told Dr. Prock she gave Max a painting that she had painted for him. That may seem like a minor thing, it's not a big deal. But again, it's part of her attempt to make it look like it's not a big deal that I needed to confront Alex. This is really more what I'm doing. I painted this for Max, and so I needed to take it to him. What we actually know about that painting, though, is that's a painting that's also acting as part of the barrier in her relationship with Jason Mengel, because it's the painting that was hanging above the bed, Jason Mengel's bed, where she had sex with John Hansen. And it's part of the barrier in that relationship that she wants so much, that ancient love that she describes. And so she has to deflect attention away from how important the painting is, and she has to deflect attention away from how important it is for her to meet Alex that day. There's more lies from the evidence. Another one, minor one again, but another one that shows that it can't keep
I
her
feel
story
like that's
straight
something
because
I
she
would
doesn't
do.
tell the truth. Is she said, I was talking to Jason. I was sitting in my car talking to Jason when the police arrived. Well, you all saw the video from Officer O'Neill. You all saw that video, and on that video, Officer O'Neill meets with Jason over at the school, over at that Montessori school across the road when he first gets there. And then he pulls over to Alex's apartment. The defendant's not talking to Jason Mengel when Officer O'Neill pulls up because Jason Mengel is across the street. Her story also
Hold on a
changes
second.
depending on who her audience is.
Could you take that down? I can't see the slides.
So I think, hold on just a second.
Is that needed to? Thank you. Sorry about that.
Her story changes depending on who her audience is. Her story changes, her version of the events changes depending on who her audience is. When she talks about moving out of Jason's apartment, when she talks to Jason, she talks to some other people, it's because of the situation with John Hansen. She just can't take that. She can't be there because of that. But you saw that text exchange between Jenna Van de Zandt and the defendant. She tells Jenna, I'm moving out because of Jason, because I can't take it with him anymore. her story changes about the heating pad. She tells Jason, I want to return that because it makes me
Oh
sad.
my God. Did you guys even hear that?
Her statement.
All right. Sorry. What I was trying to answer Max, and I muted the stream and not me, and didn't unmute myself. Okay. Ezra said that she had both of those knives in her center console. However, they were not both found in the center console. The bigger of the two, the longer of the two knives, I believe that's the one that was found like in the ditch. When that's the one she chunked. Then there was a steak knife in the trunk, and then that EMT knife, I believe, was also in the trunk. So yeah, sorry about that.
Send them back to that scene. She does not want them to be back where Alex's body is until she can clean up and be able to follow through on her plan A, which is Alex attacked me at Owen Park. He must have dumped me in that area, and who knows where he is with my car now. She lies when she says she doesn't know where Alex is. She clearly knows where Alex is. She absolutely does. That is a central detail without any question. She knows where he is, and she lies because, again, she doesn't want to send law enforcement back there. She wants to keep the plan A. And finally, she lies, a small detail, but she lies when she says she urinated herself. She wants to make herself look like she was really panicked. So panicked she urinated herself. Yet Joe Wayne and Jennifer Morris, who examined the defendant closely, said she had not urinated herself. She wants to make it look that so bad that she had to urinate herself. It didn't happen. So let's take a look now. Let's consider the physical facts in this case. Let's consider what those physical facts tell us, and let's take a look and see if those physical facts support or discredit the defendant's story. Do those physical facts tell us that she's telling the truth, or do those physical facts tell her that it's just one more lie? Let's start with Alex's cell phone. Alex's cell phone is found there. Her story is that she fell while she was walking, and the phone broke, and that's where it's going to be. Well, physical facts tell us that the front of the phone and the battery, which is out of it, are down here, right here, much nearer the driveway. And the physical facts tell us the back of the phone is right here, almost to the.
Are you talking about the painting, Mo? Something about it that confused me, that confused you? I can't, honey, I can't know what confused you. You got to tell me, because what I heard didn't confuse me. So can you help me? Alice June, hold on just a second.
Location of the driveway. Physical facts show she's not telling the truth about what happened to the phone. It didn't break when she fell down. She took it apart, left part there, and left part in a separate location. The defense may say, well, wait a minute. We know there was water flowing there. There's water flowing along here. But the water is flowing in this direction here. Don Sipple's down towards Louis Bjork's property. And what does your common sense tell you again about this? If water is going to move part of that phone, is it going to move this part that's heavy, like a sink, or is it going to move this part that maybe is a little lighter and may float along? It's going to make the back, it's going to make the back move, not the heavier part. Physical facts tell us her story is not true. Physical facts about this injury to Alex right here, on the side of his head, on the right side of Alex's head. That physical fact tells us the defendant is lying, and was lying when she got on the witness stand and told her story. And why, ladies and gentlemen, it's important to remember the details. And unfortunately for the defendant, she doesn't remember the details, or at least she doesn't get her story to fit the details. Because she told you clearly, Alex is facing her. He's within inches of her, and the knife is in her right hand. She's holding this knife here.
Okay, so they did, Alley 79. So the first incident took place the blackout drunk night, and that was at John's house. He took her back to her apartment that she shared with Jason, and they had a second around two, right? As far as the painting goes, the reason if the prosecutor is saying, let me highlight that, Mo. The reason that the prosecutor is saying that with respect to the painting is because if she wouldn't want out if she's trying to get back with Alex, which it doesn't make any sense to me, but whatever, that's their theory, that she's trying to she does not want Alex to know that she was at Jason's. That's where the painting was. It's not about the actual painting, like the subject matter of the painting. It's about where the painting was located, which was above the bed in Jason's house. And also keep in mind that Alex had already spoken to the police about what Ezra had told him with respect to the situation with John, that it was not an essay, it was consensual, and she had regrets. Okay. All right, here we go.
Her right hand. Alex is inches away from her while she holds his knife in her right hand, and she stabs him with enough force to go through the temporal bone of Alex's head. And both Dr. Mills and Dr. Thomas told you that takes a lot of force. And ladies and gentlemen, Alex is facing her. Alex's right side is here. Her right side is here. How does she come around and stab him with enough force to go through his temporal bone? No, ladies and gentlemen, the physical facts tell you that this injury right here happened while Alex is facing away from her. And ladies and gentlemen, that is...
Okay, so after this is over, Mo will upload the other testimony to her channel. But yes, she basically is trying to claim that the reason for the different stories is because she was not treated as a victim initially, and that the trauma that she experienced, essentially fighting for her life, is what caused her to have gaps in her memory. And so that's why she had changed her story. It wasn't a lie. It was trauma. Okay.
Does not support self-defense. That supports an unprovoked attack on Alex Woodworth. That's what the physical facts tell us. Not somebody's memory, not somebody under stress, not somebody that has PTSD, not somebody that has anything else. Those are physical facts.
No, babe,
Those are
it's no
things that
big
can't
deal.
be
We didn't
changed.
cover it. I got annoyed.
And that
It's
right
me.
there
It's my
tells
fault.
you the defendant is lying. Defendant's story is that except for one stab in the left side on Alex, every other stab took place while she's in the car. That's her story. That includes the stab to the head that we just talked about. That includes the slices along Alex's right side of his neck, slices that were so deep that they cut through the external and the internal jugular vein bleeding. As all of the medical doctors agreed who testified about it, said it was going to lead to a lot of bleeding. That includes the cut to Alex's groin that involved a lot of bleeding. I mean, you saw, not only did you hear from the doctors, you saw Alex's sweater, you saw his pants, you saw how much bleeding that is. So Alex is supposedly either in the car or right near the car when that happens. When that slice occurred and all that bleeding. Again, it's not spurting blood, but it's heavy bleeding. What do the physical facts tell us about that story, that Alex is in the car when that happens? Well, this is the interior of the car. Now we see a fair amount of blood in here. Well, what we see is transferred blood that's smeared off of Alex when he sits there after he's stabbed. We do not see any pooling of blood here on the floor, where at that time, according to her story, there isn't going to be anything. We don't see any pooling of blood right outside of the car, and we'll see that in just a moment. No, we see a lot of smears of blood. We do not see that large volume of pooled blood that you're going to see if that slice across the neck occurred there. But what do we see outside? Outside, we see pools of blood here. We see pools of blood here. See, it's not on this picture, but there's another pool of blood you saw.
I'm done with you, Allie.
That tells you where Alex is when his neck is sliced.
Completely done with you for the rest of the day.
When his groin is stabbed, where those pools of blood are. There aren't any pools of blood right there.
Like Allie and I said.
Ladies and gentlemen, that tells you Alex was not stabbed in that car. Those physical facts, those are not facts that are dependent on somebody's memory. They're not facts that are dependent or that could be not encoded because of stress. They're not facts that have anything to do with whether somebody has PTSD or not. Those are physical facts. and they contradict the defendant's story. I also heard about the defendant's license. This is another physical fact. Remember? And I asked her, I said, all right, this is a direct quote out of the transcript of the defendant's story that she told on the witness stand just a few days ago. All right, you told Officer O'Neill you couldn't find your driver's license, correct? Her answer was, I think I was having trouble shuffling around. The middle console was full of lots of paper and stuff. She couldn't find her license in there. Well, what do the physical facts tell us about this one? Physical facts show us this is her license here. All right, that's her license on the driver's seat. What do the physical facts tell us about the center console? She can't find this license in here, in this spot there.
Oh dear.
That makes no sense.
No, it
She
doesn't.
didn't want to find her license. She didn't want to get her license out because she didn't want to open that center console because she knew this knife was in that center console. She knew this was there, and she didn't want the police to see that knife that were there because that might raise some flags with them. That might raise some concerns that maybe everything isn't all right. That's why she doesn't get the license out. She doesn't want anybody to see that knife. And what do the physical facts about the defendant's injuries tell us? Physical facts about the injuries tell us exactly what Dr. Tillotson told you. We're going to talk about why Dr. Tillotson is credible in a little.
I just want to say, Prosecutor DeFore, if you're listening, I'm a whiz at Canva. I'm also a whiz with whatever it is you're using here that I can't think of, but I do know how to work it. Office. So if you need some help for your next case, I could make these slides far more interesting. Just letting you know. Okay, bye.
A while. Physical facts about her injuries tell you that those injuries were not inflicted by Alex in an attack on her. Even just looking at them and understanding them yourself, it's clear. I mean, this, ladies and gentlemen, comes right from the exhibit. I think it's exhibit 195. And you saw this was part of the page that was put up on the screen. And this is what the...
No, I had to rein Nightbot in because he's clearly Nightbot's out of control and went completely rogue. However, I'm going to add every word that you would use, Shmita, to the blocked list so that you will never be able to talk and chat again since you think it's okay to be a smart aleck. Okay, here we go.
Chapter talks about as parallel, superficial, incised wounds. They're not talking about geometrically parallel lines. They're talking about lines that are going in the same direction, right? As opposed to, lines that are going all over the place. And you can just imagine if you're kicking and moving and your leg is going all over the place, it's going to be impossible to cut a straight line. Lines are going to be zigzag. They're going to be starting, stopping. They're going to be all over the place. But this is talking about multiple parallel, superficial, incised wounds. And what do we see on the defendant? Not only do we see that, but we start with this one right here.
Hey, recliner
And that she did to
detective.
herself. And take a look at that in comparison to these on her hand. Very similar depth, very similar looking wounds. Compare them to these right here on her leg. Again, very similar looking, multiple lines. Again, when you consider what the picture in the textbook itself shows, multiple parallel, superficial, incised wounds. Multiple superficial, incised wounds. And you look at these, again, multiple superficial, admittedly not parallel, but again, straight lines. That's something that makes sense with somebody who's moving and kicking and moving all over the place, which is the defendant's original story. And I'm not going to, for various reasons, show another one of the pictures which shows even more superficial wounds in the most sensitive area. But she needs those there because she knows that Plan B has to include claiming that Alex was attempting to sexually assault her, so she's got to put some wounds there. She's got to put some wounds in that sensitive area. But what, ladies and gentlemen, remember, she said her story to Detective Crockett is, I cut my hand when I grabbed the knife. I grabbed it with my hand on the blade, and it hurt a lot. This is what Dr. Tillotson says it looks like when you grab the blade, and it hurts a lot to get away from your assailant.
Also,
And so
anybody
the
that's
defendant's
ever,
story
hold
has to
on a
change
minute,
again.
excuse me,
All right?
prosecutor.
She gets
Also, I've watched at least 11 billion and 1100 hours of Game of Thrones. I've seen swords grabbed by people's hands. A sword is what? A big ass knife? Okay. Thank you. I rest my case. She did not grab that knife. Okay, moving on.
That's confronted with this when Dr. Tillotson testifies at a hearing before trial. She knows now that story about grabbing the knife by the blade to pull it away from Alex doesn't work anymore. So her story has to change. Her story changes to I batted at the knife, and then I need him in the groin, and that's how I got the knife away from him. Her story changes when she's confronted by the facts.
I did get Nightbot
Her story on getting the knife
hold on
away
a
from
sec.
there doesn't make much sense because
No,
according
none
to
of her
story,
stories make
the glasses
sense.
are-
You're right. I got Nightbot to say some
That money
funny
drives it.
stories. Hold on. I lost where we were. We're way past this. We're like at 47 something. Sorry. I meant to push mute.
She's holding this knife here,
All right, here we are.
and you grab the blade.
I got Nightbot to say some cute sayings. Please to hold.
A lot to get away from your assailant. And so the defendant's story has to change again. All right? She gets confronted with this when Dr. Tillotson testifies at a hearing before trial. She knows now that story about grabbing the knife by the blade to pull it away from Alex doesn't work anymore. So her story has to change. Her story changes to I batted at the knife, and then I need him in the groin, and that's how I got the knife away from him. Her story changes when she's confronted by the facts. And her story of getting the knife then from there doesn't make much sense because according to her story, her glasses are off, she can't see more than a couple inches in front of her, and yet she's able to find the knife, pick it up, and use it without her glasses. Her story changes, her story makes no sense. She's not telling the truth. And the physical facts, her own injuries tell you that. And her own injuries tell you how likely is it that Alex could have cut her exactly the same depth, exactly the same way as she admittedly cut herself, when Alex is supposedly doing that through her clothing. Ask yourself, does that make any sense? When we talk about the defendant's clothes and what they tell us about her story, we start with the blood. The blood that's on some blue flannel shirt. I'm not going to take it out. I'm going to take it off.
You have to type
There's
the
blood on a
word,
blue
Mo.
flannel
You
shirt.
can't
Whose
just
blood is
type
on a
the
blue flannel shirt?
exclamation point, babe.
And it's blood. That's whose blood is on that shirt. And ladies and gentlemen, you heard the testimony. You saw the gold sweater. There's no visible blood on the gold sweater. How does the blood get from her skin onto the blue shirt?
I took a more scholarly approach. Vincent's missing year, I watched a lot of horror films and Game of Thrones. That's my scholarly approach, research without getting my hands dirty, as it were.
Without touching the gold sweater, without leaving a stain on the gold sweater too. We don't have magic blood that goes through that sweater from her skin to the blue shirt. Defendant's story is that she didn't take off any of her clothes. She didn't remove any of her shirts. She didn't take anything off, and she carved the word boy in her arm through her shirt. Now, first off, how do you do that and be able to make a readable word on your body that you scratch into it with a knife through clothes without being able to see what you're doing? But more importantly, ladies and gentlemen, here's what she does and where she does it. And look at that in reference. This is the shirt that's closest to her. This is the shirt that is just above his gold sweater or gold yellow tiger shirt. But the one that's closest to her skin on her arm. How do you do this through this hole in that shirt? And if that shirt is pushed up or out of the way, why is this hole there? Hole is there because she creates the scene afterwards. She takes off the shirts, she carves boy in her arm, and then cuts them up to try to fit her story. She just doesn't do a very good job of it.
Yeah, she is a
I wanna talk a little bit more about
I
her
have to agree. She's horrible at
The
staging a scene.
defendant's story is
Correct.
that Alex is cutting her through her clothes, cutting her legs. They're going to bleed. We heard that, you know that, and you heard that from the doctors. Those cuts are going to bleed. All right. So you'd expect right next to the cut, where the cut in her leg is, you're going to expect to find some blood. Makes sense. And you know what? We did find blood there. But what doesn't fit the defendant's story is the blood that we find right next to that big cut on her pants leg, right next to where that incision or that incised wound is in her leg, is not her blood. It's Alex's blood. Why is Alex's blood there when Alex wasn't bleeding when this is supposedly happening?
I think her
Why is it
memory
her-
loss wasn't. I
her blood
don't
is
think
found
she
on this
had
leg.
any memory loss.
Her hand would be,
Nonstop, Mom. I think she's just
and
a
what is
lying
found
liar
mixture
mouth who
farther
tells
away from the
lies.
cuts in the leg. because she cuts those clothes afterwards. She cuts those clothes after she's killed Alex and Alex's blood has gotten on her. She cuts them when they're not on her, and then cuts her leg. She can create the scene. She also tells Detective Pratt when he's
That
asking
does
her where
not
she's
sound
injured,
fun,
she makes sure that
Vincent.
she says, "Oh yeah,
Missing
there's a cut
here.
in the pants here. I was injured over here on my left leg too. There isn't one because she's trying to match up all the places that you remember she cut her jeans. She just doesn't have a cut there. And still more on the clothes. Here I want to show you the clothes. I'll show you this because we got to take a look. It's a muddy area where we're at. And what the clothes show us? Start with this yellow t-shirt, Alex Bengal's t-shirt. It shows us mud right here. There's mud on this yellow t-shirt. It shows us there's mud right here on this blue, what was described as spotted, but what she said was a plant. Sure. And it shows us there's mud on this blue flannel shirt. But what it doesn't show us, ladies and gentlemen, it doesn't show us any mud at all on the gold sweater. No. Ladies and gentlemen, considering that physical fact, the fact that there was no mud on that sweater, and yet there's mud all the way down to the yellow tiger shirt, that tells us that her story that she never took any of those clothes off is not true. Because how does the mud get through the flannel shirt, get through the gold sweater, get through the blue plant or spotted shirt, to the yellow shirt? Why does it happen if those shirts don't come off? If she doesn't take off any of her clothes? It gets on there because she has to take them off the car, boy in her arm. It has to get on there because she takes them off so that she can set up that scene. That's why there's no mud on the gold sweater, but there is mud on the blue shirt and the tiger shirt. We need to also talk about Alex's clothes and what they tell us. You saw when Dr. Mills testified how with his clothes, with his sweater, his pants, his underwear, that those all match up. The holes in those clothes all match up perfectly with all of the injuries that Alex suffered.
Okay, now I'm getting it. I
You saw it.
couldn't
I'm showing you,
understand. Hold on. Excuse me,
Alex's
prosecutor. I couldn't understand why when he was questioning Ezra on direct or cross-examination, excuse me, why he kept asking about her stabbing him in the side. And now I understand it. They keep saying box because if you look at his arm, it looks like she scratched the word box, not boy. All right, here we go.
We're going to talk about that a little bit. Keep the gloves on for a little while because I need to talk about that a couple times. But Alex's coat, remember, he's got 2 stab wounds in the back. He's got 3 stab wounds in the side. And what do we see with Alex's coat? We see, yeah. We've got, I'll do it from the inside. I think it's a little easier to see on the inside. We've got 2 cuts in Alex's coat. We've got one right here, shoulder area, and we've got one right here, the lower back. That's where we have 2 cuts in Alex's coat.
Poor Mo.
What do we know
Feel
about
better,
cuts in Alex?
babe.
Where do we know about where he was stabbed? Well, first off, I apologize, not the greatest picture in the world, but this is Alex on Officer Zwiefelhofer's squad video, you can see how the coat covers his side. Goes down, covers his side. It's important. Because what we know is that Alex has these 2 injuries labeled. And again, the labeling, the numbering, it's just arbitrary. We're not trying to say this was the 15th and that was the 16th injury or something. It's just how Dr. Mills marks them. We've got this cut here, and this stab wound here, and this stab wound here. They correspond to the 2 holes I showed you just a moment ago in the coat. But we also have these 3 stab wounds. Sharp force injury number 8, sharp force injury number 9, and sharp force injury number 10. And according to the defendant's story, Alex has his coat on the whole time she's stabbing him. The left side of Alex's coat, you can look all you want, you take all the time you want to look at it. There is not a single hole in Alex's coat on the left side. Not one. Look at it all you want, as much time as you want. You're never going to find the hole on that side. So ask yourself, ladies and gentlemen, if Alex is wearing his coat, if the defendant's story is he is, how do these 3 stab wounds magically appear in him? They go through his sweater, just like they should. But those 3 injuries took place after Alex had taken his coat off. And the defendant's story is that doesn't happen until after she had stabbed him every time she's going to. Her story doesn't fit the physical facts. Her story is a lie. Just blood for blood. So what does the DNA tell us about what happened on March 22nd? DNA doesn't lie. DNA doesn't have problems with memory. DNA doesn't have issues. DNA tells us facts. And it tells us where Alex's blood is, and it tells us where the defendant's blood is. But maybe more importantly, in many respects, it tells us where the defendant's blood is not, where her DNA is not. Because where her DNA is not also tells us that the defendant's story is a lie.
Proving once again that Alex did not take his coat off and lay down to take a nap after he was stabbed, like Allie 79 and I said. Okay, that's all.
So let's start
I lied. Ezra is a liar. That's all.
with the inside of the car. This is a photo that shows, and we've added onto it so that you've got an idea of where things are. What the DNA tells us about whose blood is in the car. Remember, the defendant's story is that she is being cut while she sits in the car. Or not sits, but lays down on the back seat of the car. That the cuts to her leg happen while she's laying down on the back seat of the car. That the cuts to her left hand happen while she's laying down in the back seat of the car. Those are going to bleed. We know that. We've heard that. Common sense tells us that. Whose blood is in the back seat of the car? Alex's.
R.I.P. Oberon.
If the defendant is being cut while she's in the back seat of the car, why is none of her blood, why is not any of her blood found in there? They sampled a lot of locations in there, on the seat backs, all over. None of it's hers. It's all Alex's. If she was being cut there, why isn't her blood there? What does the DNA evidence tell us about?
Unless it's that Jane lady handling him, and then they want to go over to sniff the porta potty, but Jane won't let them.
The outside of the car. Tells us, and we've talked about this, I'm not going to repeat it, that the pools of blood are Alex's. But equally importantly, ladies and gentlemen, it tells us, and it's not shown specifically on here, but this trailer.
Yes,
Defendant's
PowerPoint. That's what I couldn't
It's on
remember
two
the word
locations,
for.
6 feet apart. You heard that testimony. 2 different
Thank you,
spots,
Mo.
6 feet apart on that trailer. Her blood's there. Her story does not explain why her blood's on that trailer. On that trailer because she's trying to set up a scene. Her blood is also, while you can't see it in this picture, her blood is on the outside of this driver's side rear door. Big drop of her blood is there. It runs down the door. In her story, that door is never closed. how does her blood get on the other side of that door, a drop of it like that, under her story? It doesn't fit her story. It's not explained by her story. It's explained by setting up a scene later on when the door is closed, and before she tries to pull Alex out of the car and leave.
All I can say about Jane is this. Clearly, there's no finer example of love from a dog than that poor dog that Jane was handling. And I use that term loosely. Because no matter what, even though he kept pulling and tugging and was choking himself trying to get over there, he still loves Jane. And that's what the love of a dog means. Do better next time, Jane. Do better.
Leaves him in this position. She's cutting herself. She's making up the scene. And that's how the blood gets on the outside. And her blood on the trunk, we already talked about. That's a spot. She had to change her story to fit the facts. And ladies and gentlemen, maybe most importantly, what does the DNA on the knife tell us about whether this knife was used to cut the defendant, as she claims? What the blood evidence and the DNA evidence on this knife tells us is that, yes, there's blood. In fact, Kevin Scott didn't just do a presumptive test. He did a confirmatory test to confirm that there's blood on the blade. There's blood on the handle of this knife. And what does it tell us about whose blood is on the blade of this knife? Who was cut with this knife? Alex. The DNA evidence does not say that there's any of the defendant's DNA, any of her blood, on the blade of this knife. Alex was cutting her with this knife. Where is her blood? Her DNA is on the handle as part of a mixture with Alex, where Alex is the major contributor and she's the minor. And that, ladies and gentlemen, makes sense that she's using this knife to stab Alex repeatedly, which we know is the truth. No blood. No DNA of the defendant. And what, ladies and gentlemen, do these wounds, these deep wounds, to Alex's neck, that severed the jugular vein, tell us about the defendant's story? They tell us, ladies and gentlemen, that again, she changed her story to fit the facts, to try and fit the facts. It doesn't work very well, but she tried to. Because her story to Ryan Prock on March 24th is that Alex is on top of her when she slices his neck 3 times. Alex is on top of her. And if that's the case, ladies and gentlemen, when that wound starts bleeding like crazy, like it's going to, that blood is going to fall down right on top of the defendant, onto her shirt. She's got to change her story after the fact because Alex's blood isn't on her shirt. It didn't come down when she sliced across his neck like it would have. So she has to change her story and say, no, he's not on top of me. He's in front of me. Changing her story to try and fit the facts. Because the facts for the DNA do not support her story. She's also got serious inconsistencies. And again, the state totally agrees with Dr. Hoffman. When someone is involved in a stressful situation, seriously stressful situation, that we agree. The science is clear that they will concentrate on central facts. Absolutely agree that if somebody's sticking a gun in your face, you're most likely to concentrate on that gun that's in your face. Absolutely, we totally acknowledge that. But the inconsistencies I want to talk about are inconsistencies either in central facts that would be super encoded that she would remember without any question, or for information that happens before that stress started. Remember that line that goes up, this stressful event is what starts that process of memory issues. The inconsistencies are relating to what happens before that, when your memory is normal. She told you, her story today is Alex was going to have her one more time. He was going to sexually assault her. But when Ryan Kroc asked her about that situation, asked her what was going to happen, she said, well, I just think he was going to look at me. That's probably the first thing that came to her mind when she's talking about it then. But later on, thinking about it, thinking, geez, that doesn't sound really good. I killed him. It doesn't sound great that he was just trying to look at me and I just got these superficial cuts. It'll sound better if I say he was trying to rape me. That sounds a whole lot better. That sounds a whole lot better to protect myself from getting convicted of first-degree intentional homicide. Ryan Prock asked her, why would somebody be cutting your clothes? And she told him, I don't know. Again, a central fact is what's going on here. And later on, she remembers, And she says, oh yeah, that's right. He cut my clothes once before. That's not something that was part of the stressful event. That's something that happened a long time ago. Supposedly, it was happened a long time ago. And she doesn't tell Ryan Prock about that. She says, I have no idea. And while I guess probably not an inconsistency where she says one thing one time and she says another, but it's interesting to when you listen to her statement to Ryan Prock about the events of March 22nd. When she's talking to Ryan Prock on March 24th, she says, when I got to that road. That's what she said. Well, that's interesting language because just think about it again, using your common sense. When you're driving somewhere, that's how you're going to describe it. But if you're a passenger, it's going to be more like, well, when we got there, or when we, when they got there, something like that. Not when I got there. Sorry about this. Some more inconsistencies. Again, central facts. Actually, the first one is a fact before the stress started. All right, remember her testimony, her story is, I'm in the car trying to find something to get us unstuck. All right, both times when she talked to Ryan Prock in March, and when she got on the stand and told her story was she was trying to find something. But when Ryan asked her, did you throw anything out? She said, nope, didn't throw anything out. Her story changed now to, I threw out the blanket, I threw out the pillow while I was hunting through them. So before the stressful event started, assuming you believe it was that stressful event, before that happens, when things are just being normally encoded, your memories are normally being encoded. Her description of Alex taking off the glasses, she never tells Ryan Prock that. And yet her story changes to that because it has to look better. It has to look like she can't see anything so that her story can be better for her. And her story changes on where the first cuts were. Her story changes on that because remember, she told Ryan Prock, he first starts cutting on my legs. But she changes it. She has to change it to fit the facts because she's got to change it to fit the facts that her first concern was when he's cutting her sweater and then she feels that prick in her stomach. And now she's on alert. That's when the stress starts. She's got to change it to that. To change in her story. Ladies and gentlemen, when you've considered all of those things I talked about, the defendant's credibility is zero. Her story is just that, a story. It's not the truth. It's not what happened. I want to spend a couple minutes, and I don't want to spend more than that because, frankly, Alex's journals are a distraction in this case. They're a distraction from what really happened, the defendant murdering Alex. But we do need to talk about them briefly. And I think the first thing you need to think about them is the unreality of the defendant's story about how she first met Alex and first got to know about these journals. Her story is she goes into a bar and she sees Alex sitting there. He's writing some stuff up and she asks him what she's writing about. Oh, that makes some sense. But what does her story then become? He says, yeah, I'm writing about philosophy and I'm writing about cannibalism. Ladies and gentlemen, think to yourself and think about that situation and use your common sense. Your common sense, what does it tell you? Does it tell you, A, that someone who just meets someone else is going to tell them I'm writing about cannibalism? And B, does your common sense tell you that someone who just hears that in a bar at night, what's their first reaction going to be to that? Is their first reaction going to be, oh, tell me everything you can about that area? Or is your first reaction going to be, oh, nice seeing you, bye? That's your first reaction. You don't want to know everything you can about cannibalism from someone you've just met in a bar. But secondly, look at the defendant's description. She describes Alex's philosophy and says, and certainly Alex definitely has an interest in St. Augustine's famous quotation, love and do as you will. There's no doubt about it. He has many writings about that. All of them philosophical, but he has many writings about it. And the defendant's story is that Alex told her that basically means I can do whatever the heck I want, whenever I want. I can take whatever I want. It's all about me and taking whatever I want. Now, there was only two people to that conversation where this supposedly happened. The defendant and Alex.
Attorney, I'm sorry.
Alex.
Take attorney's break.
Oh, okay. All right, that's fine.
Sorry.
All right. And if that happens again, if somebody needs a break, that's fine. I know I can, my wife tells me I talk too long a lot, so. There's only two people to that conversation, defendant and Alex. And Alex can't be here in person to tell you that the defendant was lying about that. But you know what? Alex is still here to tell you the defendant is lying. Because Alex tells you it in the journal entry titled Desire and Will. One of the entries that's in Exhibit 697, the journal documents, one of the ones that the defendant didn't bother to bring up herself. Didn't bother to bring it up because it doesn't support her story. It doesn't support her story on what her discussions with Alex is about. Because that journal entry, in that entry, Alex is here today telling you what he means, telling you the defendant's a liar,
Objection.
telling you,
Objections noted, overruled.
telling you she's lying to you when her story is that Alex believed in taking. Because desire and will tells you what love and do as you will really means. Love and do as you will means it is an expression of an excellent morality. It is about giving, to give and give and give to the other. It is in fact, and Alex is telling you in that journal entry, it is in fact the exact opposite of the defendant's story. That Alex is about giving. He is not about taking. And finally, the defendant's story on this issue, when you listen to her and heard her on direct and cross-examination, just doesn't ring true. She's on the stand, she's on direct, reads a part of a thing and says, oh yeah, I remember absolutely clearly, 100%. Alex and I, we talked directly about that. We talked about it and he said this and he said that, said this and he said that. But when I tried to cross-examine her on some of the entries that she didn't talk about on direct, well, no, I don't really remember that stuff. I don't remember anything about that. After months of time, she's able to, again, craft her story to fit her narrative. Just doesn't ring true. And I want to talk about the book Fear and Trembling. And frankly, ladies and gentlemen, this part is somewhat, I think, insulting to your intelligence, the use of this by the defense. Because the defense brought this book out how many times to show you the cover of this book, to show you a cover of a book that's about the biblical story of Abraham and Isaac. And I'm sure many of you may very well be familiar with the story of Abraham taking Isaac out into the desert at the angel's command to sacrifice Isaac because that's what God wanted. And Soren Kierkegaard in this book writes a book about that and the philosophical constructs of that and how that has to do with faith. But they trotted that book out all those times not to talk about the contents of that book because you didn't hear about a single word inside of that book during the testimony. All you saw was the cover because they want to insult your intelligence and think you're going to think because you see a book with a cover that Alex has, that has a cover on it, that has somebody with a knife at somebody else's throat, that Alex is somehow the one who is attacking the defendant here.
Tell it.
The defendant is trying to insult your intelligence. Don't let that happen. And the other thing about that book is the defendant's testimony is, oh, Alex would read that all the time to me while we're having sex, while we're engaged in sexual activity. He'd sit there and he'd read it to me while he's having sex with me. Or remember her testimony as well? Her story is they always had sex in the dark or with a dim candlelight. How is he reading a book to her while he's having sex with her in the dark? I don't think Alex had X-ray vision. He doesn't have the night vision capabilities of the latest iPhones, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, I think it would be night vision, not X-ray, but that's okay.
And ladies and gentlemen, let's take a
You
look
got
at
it at the end there. That's what matters.
What the story says about what had to happen after she stabbed Alex 16 times. Let's think about it. Her story is essentially this. I stabbed Alex 15 times while we're lying in the car. Alex then walked away, went over by the trailer, stood around there for a while, said, I need your help urinating. So she gets up out of the car, walks over by the trailer. He grabs her again, and she stabs him another time in the left side. She said her story is she stabbed him again. He then lets go. She trots away to somewhere else. Alex then
Trots
walks a little bit,
away.
takes off his coat. His coat that doesn't, by the way, have any stab wounds in the side, even though he does.
I can't highlight
takes
yours,
his coat off,
Wilson, man, but I'm
lays down on his
trying. You guys, this
Coat,
is too
well, he's still-
much.
Got blood running out of his neck, coat that doesn't have big pools of blood on it from that, or wound to his groin as he lays on it.
Oh, yeah.
She then
She's
sometimes
big
collects her
mad.
glasses,
Huge mad.
goes to the back of the car, her boy in his arm while Alex is just laying there on his coat. Not getting any blood on it. Blood somehow is getting onto the ground, but not onto his coat. She then goes back to the car, the inside of the car. Again, she's bleeding. Where does the blood go? Doesn't go in the car, but she goes in there, somehow rummages around, finds Alex's phone, takes off her other boot, and trots out of the way. And Alex then after that, after she leaves, because he hasn't moved yet, Alex all of a sudden decides, oh, well, let's see, I think I better get up from the ground here, pick up my coat, trot back over to the car,
From
get
now
all the way
on,
into the passenger side of the
wherever I
car,
go,
where his
I'm
feet
not
are, where his
walking.
mouth,
I am trotting.
and take off his shoes, put those down on the floor, and then take his coat and immediately lay it on top of his shoes, and then proceed to die and fall until he's out of the car. That's what you have to believe happens. And let's take a look at Alex's position that he's in when he's found. Remember, he's sitting over here. He's sitting right here because you see where his feet are. Feet are down on the passenger side floor well. He's sitting there, and you can see the blood transfer on the seat where he's sitting. How does Alex fall into this position? Falls so that his right arm is wedged into the door. His left arm is somewhere there in the footwell. And his sweater is pulled up on his back. Now, ladies and gentlemen, what this shows you is that somebody tried to pull Alex out of that car. How the blood gets here, that's from his neck wound. It transfers there as they're pulling him across, and he ends up getting wedged. The defendant can't pull him out. That's what that shows you. And that's what that tells you. He isn't going to fall in a position like that. That makes no sense. But you have to believe that that happened.
Literally,
The
none of
defendant's
her
story.
story makes any sense.
And ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about the defendant's story after she stabbed Alex 15 times, waiting for that 16th one to happen. What's her story? She's in the car. She's in the car. Alex is over by the trailer, and he says, I've got to pee. Come help me. Now remember, she's in that stage where Dr. Hopper told you, assuming she's telling you the truth, that her amygdala is in control, right? Right? Her amygdala is in control, telling her, not consciously, but subconsciously, to do what instinct tells you. The instincts that we develop when we have to worry about
I've
large
learned a
predators
lot.
coming and eating us. The amygdala is telling her what to do there. She's not consciously thinking what to do. She's not consciously thinking, should I help him? Should I not help him? Her amygdala is controlling her. And let's think about it in terms of Dr. Hopper's analogy of a lion comes walking through that door right there. And your amygdala takes over and tells you what to do.
Yeah,
Is
my
your instincts
amygdala is
developed
going
from
to
when that lion might have been
tell
out
me to
there
run.
regularly eating you. Does it tell you to go up and give the lion a hug? No. It tells you to stay as far away from that lion as you can.
Yes.
Your amygdala tells you to freeze, maybe. Your amygdala tells you maybe to run. Your amygdala tells you get safe. And at that point in time, when she supposedly has been attacked by Alex and is fearful of Alex, she's in the car. Her amygdala is going to tell her, close the doors, lock the doors, you're safe.
My
Her amygdala is not
amygdala
telling her to go
is
up.
smarter
and
than
help her pee.
Ezra's amygdala.
And what about as she's leaving? Now, her story is she lost one boot during the
Vincent's missing
struggle
here.
in the car, and she takes off the other boot after Alex is laid down. What's your amygdala going to tell you as it decides that you've got to flee the scene to be safe? It's going to tell you to get out of there as quickly as you can. It's not going to tell you to take time to take off a boot so that you're moving with just in your stocking feet on a 40-degree day. Your
Right.
amygdala is going to tell you, get out of there, don't worry about the boots, or the other option is put on the other boots so you can get out of there as quickly as you can. But it's not going to tell you to take time to take off the boot at that point.
Yeah, my amygdala would not be worried about me
What
running
about
with an
the defendant's
uneven
actions
gait.
at Don Sipple's house? I think these are important. And they're important because when you're scared, you want help. You want the police to come to protect you, to take care of you. But what is the defendant's actions? He gets to Don Sipple's house. He doesn't ask Don to call the police. He asks if Don can take him to the hospital. She doesn't want the police there. She doesn't want the police finding her there and possibly finding Alex's body because she hasn't had the time to clean up yet. And she can't remember anything, but she can remember Jason Mengel. She can remember it enough to be able to, in fact, spell Jason's last name for the police.
We all literally said the same
I wanna
thing when
talk
we
a
heard
little bit
that
about
too.
motive. Now,
When
the
we
judge has
watched
told you
that
we don't
dash
have to
cam.
prove that the defendant had a motive. Motive is not the same as intent. But that motive is something that you can consider. If the defendant had a motive, it's something you can consider in determining whether or not she's guilty or not. And the defendant had a motive
Ellie.
that day. And her motive goes back a couple days earlier to March 19th. March 19th, remember, is a day that Jason Mengel met Jenna Van de Zandt in the bar. And Jenna talked to Jason about the situation between the defendant and Alex, and talked about the relationship they had, and told Jason, in fact, about the defendant's actions at Alex's apartment where she was in the shower. She came out with just a towel on and told Matt Schreiner I just broke up with Jason. Isn't that great? A big smile on her face. And Jason, when he gets home from the bar, calls the defendant and talks to her and confronts her about these things. Now, before that, they were trying to see about getting back together. They were still having loving conversations. They still were meeting occasionally and staying in a hotel with each other and making love. They were still having loving conversations, talking about how each of them want to have children, but they only want to have potentially children with each other. They're still telling each other they love each other. But Jason calls her, confronts her with this, and hangs up on her. Defendant, what does she do? She immediately calls Jenna and says, Jenna, you've got to fix this. You've got to take care of this. You've got to fix the problem you made. Jenna writes a note, leaves it for Jason that he gets on the 20th. And in the note, basically, she says, oh, there may have been some miscommunications, but I'm out of this. I'm washing my hands of this. Jason shares this letter, this note, with the defendant. When she shares it with the defendant, it's clear Jenna didn't do what the defendant told her to do. Jenna didn't fix it. And you can certainly understand why the hairs on Jenna's neck had gone up when she had that conversation with the defendant. Because now the defendant knows Jenna didn't fix this problem with Alex. She needs to fix it. And so she wakes up on March 22nd and comes to Eau Claire with fire in her eyes, as Jason described it. And she comes to get Alex to
Objection.
Note your objection, preserve for the record, overruled.
And when Jenna didn't fix it, she is going to fix it. She's going to go to Alex's apartment, and she's going to go there, and she's going to get Alex to admit their relationship was wrong. It was a mistake. You heard that in her own words in the interview on March 24th. She said, I went there, we talked about our relationship. I told him how our relationship was a mistake, it was wrong. And I asked him if he felt the same way, and he said, no, he didn't. But she's got to fix it because that's what's standing between her and the love of her life. Because remember that last Instagram exchange between Jason Mengel and the defendant the night of March 21st. An Instagram that's polite, but certainly not loving. An Instagram where the defendant tells Jason, based on her conversation with her father, my life starts now. And Jason doesn't respond to that with, our life starts together. He responds with two messages. One, that's a good idea. Two, no more lies. And then the Instagram exchange ends with the defendant expressing her feelings are still there. She still loves Jason. She still wants to be with Jason by closing out that Instagram exchange with my husband. And Jason doesn't respond, my wife, he just responds, dream wildly. So the defendant's got to fix this problem herself. And the only thing standing in the way is that relationship she had with Alex. She needs him to say it was a mistake. She needs to get Alex out of the picture. And Alex says no. So she's got to get him to a place where she can make him say it was a mistake. A place in private. Louis Bjork's feel. And when Alex continues to say, no, I'm not going to do that, she snaps, she gets into a rage, and she stabs him. She stabs him in the head. She slices his neck.
It's total speculation. Objection. This is total and complete speculation. You're not allowed to speculate.
This is an argument, and you note your objection, it's overruled.
That's what she does. When you look at the defendant's testimony, when she's talking about something that other people are present for, that other people can confirm or deny.
Uh-oh, what happened?
She can't remember.
Sorry, guys.
Don't remember that. Don't remember that. Ask her about the interview with Officer Reeves. I don't remember anything about that. Ask her about talking to the nurses. I don't remember anything about that. Ask her about anything that somebody else can confirm or deny it. She can't remember it. You ask her about things that only happened between herself and Alex. All of a sudden, her memory.
Yeah, I'm not understanding this. Wait a minute. I'm going to push pause. This doesn't make any sense. It seems to me that Alex was away from Ezra, that Alex didn't want to have anything to do with Ezra. I didn't see any evidence of Alex chasing Ezra. Do you know what I mean? Like he wasn't hitting her up, he wasn't, emailing her, whatever. None of that stuff. I'm sorry, Prosecutor DeFort. I have to strongly disagree with your theory of motive, but you're doing a good job, so keep up. Keep it up. Sorry.
That's not the truth. That's a story. Let's talk briefly about the experts. We've got Dr. Mills, Dr. Tillotson, Dr. Tovar, Dr. Benson, Dr. Thomas, and Dr. Hopper. Let's start with the medical experts. First thing that's important is both forensic pathologists who talked to you told you Alex died from sharp force injuries that the defendant inflicted on him. They confirm.
Okay. This is what Allie and I put together, Coolest Reviews. We believe that the true motive for what happened on March 22nd was Alex had been interviewed by the police about the alleged essay of Ezra by John Hansen. And Alex told the detectives that were investigating that Ezra had essentially admitted that it was consensual and it was a mistake that she regretted. And he told the cops that. So we think that Ezra was angry with Alex and that Jason was real close to finding out what he had said to the cops, or at least knowing that he had been interviewed. Okay. And I think she was worried that Jason was going to ask Alex what he said, what he had told the investigators. And I think Allie and I think that was the true motive. That is why she wanted to stop. That's what she was trying to get to stop. She didn't really care what he told the cops, but she cared what he was going to tell Jason. And because she had been keeping up this lie that she was SA'd and that, blah, 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 right? So Allie and I think that the true motive, hey, Le Chat Noir, was that if he were confronted by Jason, that she wanted him to lie and say and not tell what she had told him. That's what she wanted, because initially she also said that she was going to go, the whole start, well, I guess her reasoning for wanting what she told people is that she was going to ask Alex if he is the one who wrote her phone number on the bathroom wall at Racy's. Well, why would she need to ask him that? Because he wrote in his journals. He literally wrote. She was familiar with his handwriting. So she wouldn't need to ask him if he wrote that. She would know. Period. So the motive, the motive was not a love triangle. In my opinion, the motive was she wanted Alex not to tell Jason what she had told him. She had regrets about telling the truth to Alex and was very worried that medic Jason Rogers, screenshot taker, timeline maker, was about to put all of the pieces together. And that would be an absolute deal breaker. It's one thing to cheat. It is another thing to lie about, to cheat and then say that it was SA. Because he went and confronted John at the Racy's. And that led into a disagreement, and then it escalated to the point where Jason had her down there making a police report, and all of her lies were about to become unraveled, kind of like Chazzle Dazzle.
Caused Alex's death. And then you heard from a couple of experts, a couple of doctors, on the defendant's injuries. And you heard from Dr. Tillotson. Dr. Tillotson, the only doctor who testified here who wasn't being paid to come here and testify, whose only interest, he told you what his interest is. His interest is in his patient and what's best for his patient. All he's trying to do every single day, and all he was trying to do in this case was help his patient, who was the defendant. And he told you and he explained why, and we've gone through why. His opinion is these injuries are self-inflicted that the defendant.
Yeah, I did.
And if they're self-inflicted, ladies and gentlemen, if all of them are, the defendant's lying, obviously, and she's guilty.
It's hard for me to
You
keep
also heard
Spazzy
Dr.
Lazzy
Tovar.
and Chazzle
Dr.
Dazzle
Tovar
all
on that.
together
Who says, well,
in my brains.
my opinion is they're consistent with being inflicted by somebody else. And that's what he writes in his report. And my opinion is that Alex's injuries are consistent with somebody acting in self-defense. And that's what he writes in his report. And the defendant told law enforcement the boy was carved into her arm by Alex. And that's what he writes in his report. A report that he can't even get Alex's last name right, except about half the time. I mean, puts it in there, I think it was 17 times. He gets it right 9 times. He gets it wrong 8 times. That's the type of expertise that you want to rely upon. But not only that, he writes his report in such a way that it sounds like he's supporting everything the defendant says. But when you actually ask him questions, well, yeah, no, it could be consistent with something else. It could be consistent with self-inflicted injuries. No, it could be
Heather,
consistent
whatever.
with
Good to see you, babe.
killing somebody unprovoked. Yeah, no, that's right. I mean, yeah, you're right. She told law enforcement that she did it herself. But he doesn't put any of that in. And especially galling is the fact that he puts in there that she says that Alex carved boy into her arm when he knew without any question that Alex didn't do it. And yet he writes it in his report. What credibility does someone who does that kind of stuff have with you? I submit none. Dr. Benson testifies it's his opinion that she is diagnosed with PTSD, but he cannot tell you the exact cause of that PTSD. He can't tell you what it was from. And Dr. Benson, who gratuitously adds the statement, I'm not a hired gun, when nobody had asked him if he was or wasn't a
Closure.
hired gun.
Yes.
Just puts it out.
Absolutely.
Actually acted a heck of a lot like a hired gun when on cross-examination, the state was asking him, does PTSD cause you to lie? And he says, well, that's a difficult question. You got to consider whether it's a lie of omission or a lie of commission. Making it clear, commission, if you know you're lying at the time you're lying, that's not explained by PTSD. When you try to get him pinned down, he just keeps changing and changing and changing the question so that he doesn't have to actually answer that question. That sounds like someone who has an axe to grind in the case, someone who has an agenda in the case, not someone who's just here, like Dr. Tillotson, testifying about what's best for his patient. And then we have Dr. Hopper. And frankly, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Hopper is an expert. His science is very, very well accepted as to what happened. But Dr. Hopper was also not a hired gun. Dr. Hopper was telling you things, and he was being straight with you, and he was being straight with the defense, and he was being straight with the state. He doesn't know what the stress is that started that whole process, assuming it even started, of causing the superencoding of central facts and not encoding of peripheral facts. He doesn't know what that stress is. Although he did say that stress could be someone being involved in a murder. That was his testimony. But he doesn't know what it is. And he was honest about that. And he also told you that while certainly her statements and how she presented could be consistent with someone who had undergone a stressful event, he also said it could be consistent with someone who was just lying.
No, you
Yeah,
really
you can't really
couldn't.
cause
Vincent's
stress.
missing here. You really could not.
So let's take a look at the timeline. This timeline is important.
You know what's annoying to me? Okay, just because we're almost done. It's annoying to me that these people nowadays that are committing these unalivings don't do a little research. Right? Like back in the day when I was Ezra's age at 19, yeah, there was the internet, okay, but it wasn't like it is now, right? And there weren't 11 billion crime themed TV stations, channels. Golly, really showing your age now, Jen. There weren't 11 billion crime channels, right? You had like Dateline, 2020, and all that, right? And then Court TV came out, and they were airing court, they were showing hearings. But now, they play Dateline on the regular network TV, and then they play it on Oxygen 87 more times, and on ID 37 more. Then you have Snapped. Then you have the ID channel, period, that's completely devoted to crime. And you couldn't just do it, make a little effort, just take a little time to make your lies sound at least a little believable, like in the realm of possibilities. Like, you were so outlandish with the lies. It's annoying. Take a little pride in your work, for Pete's sake.
Timeline of events is important because this timeline
Oh,
tells
here
us
we go. 87
right about
miles of
1:25
poster board.
when the defendant arrives at the scene where she ultimately kills Alex Woodward. She arrives.
Thank you,
at Sipple's
cameraman,
house,
for
about
zooming
4:15.
in, because Lord knows we would
Time of
never have been
911.
able to see that.
So we've got 2 hours and 50 minutes between that. 2 hours and 50 minutes between the time she gets there to Don Sipple's and the time she's arrived at the scene. Her description of what happened, her description of getting stuck once, getting it unstuck, getting it stuck a second time, looking in the back seat for something to get unstuck, then sitting on the trailer for a little while, and then going back to the car and the attack that her story talks about. An hour, maybe, at the most, to the time when she's heading to Don Sipple's house. 10 minutes to get there, that leaves her an hour and a half or more yet that's unaccounted for. An hour and a half in here that's totally unaccounted for by her story. And you know why? Because that's the time it takes her to set up the scene. That's the time it takes her to set up the scene after murdering Alex to make it look like it was self-defense. That's the time it takes her to try and get Alex's body out of the car. That's the time it takes her to try and put her blood in locations where she can do that. That's the time it takes her to cut herself. It's the time it takes her to take off her clothes, cut them, and then put them back on after she cuts herself. It's the time it takes her for the blood on her cuts to dry and then get to Don Sipple's house. It's the time it takes her to create the scene.
Thank you, Vincent.
So
Missing
what
ear.
do the physical facts, what do the evidence as it relates to the blood, what is it, physical facts as it relates to where the blood is and what type of blood there is in various locations tell us about what happened?
Easy, easy.
Ladies and gentlemen, those physical facts.
Hold on. Slow your roll. The taxpayers paid for those displays. Slow down and treat them with care. She had an awful lot of time to stage the scene, and that's the best she could do. Pitiful.
That blood tells us that Alex Woodworth is outside of the car when he's stabbed. Those physical facts tell us, as we talked about, that the defendant is behind Alex Woodworth when she stabs him in the head. And then Alex is out somewhere in this area or here where those pools of blood are when the defendant slices Alex's neck. And then Alex retreats to the car to try and get away. He runs to the car, trying to get away. And as he's doing that, he's getting stabbed in the back because those stabs are through the coat. And he must take off the coat at some point in time to try and get it off. Maybe as he's getting stabbed, he's trying to take it off. And he gets in the car and he's stabbed in the side 3 times while he sits in the car. So again, those stab wounds are peri-mortem, as Dr. Mills told you, close to the time of death. We have cuts in the seat of the car that tell us that there's stabbing taking place in there. And that's what the physical evidence tells us. And the defendant then tried to get Alex out of the car. As you can see here, they couldn't do it. That's what the physical evidence tells us. The physical evidence tells us the defendant did this intentionally, that she did this not in self-defense, and that the defendant is guilty.
Exactly.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Le Chat
when you
Noir.
consider all of the evidence in this
Ridiculous.
case, when you consider all of the evidence in this case, it is clear. It is clear beyond a reasonable doubt. It is clear beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant sitting there is guilty of first-degree intentional homicide. It's time to tell the defendant, no more lies. You're not going to get away with just one more lie. Make her take responsibility for Alex's death on March 22nd. Find her guilty. Thank you.
Boom.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to take a recess. I'm not exactly sure how long at this point in time. I don't know if we're going to have a snack or lunch, but we're going to have a break before the defense closing arguments. So
Can we have a snack and lunch? Or can we have snacks for lunch?
we'll let you know in a few minutes. Okay, so we're going to excuse the jury. All rise.
Okay, bye. Hold on a sec. All right, so that was the prosecution. See, there are parts of the story, in my opinion, the way the theory that they have as to what took place, that kind of doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Because excuse me. Hold on. Let me mute. So the parts that don't make a whole lot of sense to me are, and I know that it would be difficult for anybody to really put it together, but he did try, so that left the door open, in my opinion, for me to question. If they think that she began by stabbing from behind, that leads me to believe that this was, for lack of a better word, an ambush, an attempt at least at an ambush, right? Because he didn't see her coming. So what I'm trying to figure out then is, why did he go back in the car? Why did he sit down? That's the part that's not making sense to me. And yes, Allie, you're right. And I'm guessing here, because I'm sure that they did talk about it and I just don't remember it. But there are stabs, or defects as they call them, in the car seats. But what I'm curious about, and I did watch all of the testimony, even though I didn't play it for you guys, I don't think that they addressed the results of the defects in the car seats. So what I'm not understanding is, how do they know that wasn't part of the setting of the scene, the staging? She didn't do that after the fact. You know what I mean? That's the part how all this began. I'm kind, if they think that the wounds that were to his back and the back of his head are the ones that likely occurred first, which I think that they believe that because the subsequent wounds didn't go through the jacket, right? And these did. So was Alex walking away because he was going to use his phone to call somebody to come and get him? Is that what started it? And the only thing that I can think of that Alex would make sense with my amygdala would tell me, if there was a vehicle there that was left running, because that is what Ezra testified. And we know that at least is true, because that's how Jason, excuse me, I need to call him by his full government name, Medic Jason Roger, screenshot taker, timeline maker. That's how he found Ezra's vehicle at Alex's. It was still running. So that the only thing that I can that would make sense is that he tried to get in through went in through the back passenger door instead of the front to get away from her, because she was standing in front of the passenger door. Does that make sense? Or the driver's side door. So he couldn't get in that door. So in order to get away from her stabbing him, he went in through the passenger side front door, or back door. Oh my God, Jen. He went in through the driver's side back door to try to climb into the front seat, and Ezra was not going to stop. Well, that's what I'm thinking. I've learned a lot is that at some point they had their conversation. I don't think that it was delicate. Sorry, Jason. But I feel like he turned his back on her. And that's when it began, right? But at the end of the day, I think that I mean that could be coolest reviews, but I feel like the truth is we'll never know for sure. But my amygdala is telling me that what closure could she have needed, A? And B, how is somebody who you've not spoken to in a month now all of a sudden a threat to your ancient love? First of all, I don't even know what that means. Or is she trying are they saying that their love is ancient and in that they've been in love many lifetimes? I don't get that. But whatever. That's really pointless. But I don't know why that bothers me. That ancient love is so ridiculous sounding because of her and Jason. It's the people, not that there, I suppose, could be ancient love, but it's just so extra and just ugh. Anyway, that, in my opinion, he wasn't a threat to their relationship in a romantic way. They hadn't talked for a month. So what's the point? The only thing that in my opinion, which I know I'm trying to rationalize an irrational act, but what other, I mean, there was no final closure. Alex didn't paint that painting. That the painting had nothing to do with Alex except for the fact that it was at Jason's home when above the bed. I don't think Alex gave a rat's fat kneecap about that painting, frankly. Hey, Anaphylaxis, good to see ya. He didn't care about that painting. That painting wasn't an affront to him. That doesn't make any sense. But bottom line is, it doesn't, I mean, they've proved everything else, in my opinion, beyond a reasonable doubt. They don't really actually need motive. But that's my only, like, criticism, because they did prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt. And I have to give the prosecutor props, because we all heard the whole prone chaka chaka while reading, right? And not one of us mentioned the fact that Ezra also testified that Alex liked it to be either pitch black or soft candlelight. And that's not really good reading light, frankly. I mean, everything else aside about that story, but the reading, the light for reading is not optimal. I mean, you really wreck your eyes, frankly. You know? So, Max, to answer your question, it was in October of 2017. Yeah, because this took place in 2018. Yeah, October 2017. So that was I don't know. I think who can know how long it takes to process all that, all those emotions. But I just feel like I don't think that had anything to do with it. I still go back to Alex being interviewed by the police and him telling them that Ezra told him that the sex between her and John was consensual, but that she deeply regretted it. And I think you know, I feel like that she lured him out there and to confront him and to get him to be quiet. And I do think that when he said no, I'm not going to lie for you, like it's an effed up thing that you did, and I'm not going to cover it for you because, you know, but maybe then she tried to soften her tone and the way that she was coming at him in order to get him vulnerable and maybe thinking he was going to get a little something, because she definitely needed to have the P and the V in order to claim self-defense to an SA, right? And Alex was like, no. They were prone sky flashed, so she was facing away from him. So her story just her story never made any sense, and I highly doubt that a person who cannot look at the word albeit and read it correctly, I'm I just I just don't see her grasping the finer points of philosophy. She just doesn't seem that deep. Well, see, Le Chat Noir, that's the thing. I thought I considered that maybe a possibility, but the majority of the blood is outside of the vehicle. Yes, Vincent's missing here. Exactly. And the thing of it is, if you think about it logically, okay, the knives that were used in the crime, right, were both in the center console. All right. So they're having this conversation. Alex, and they're standing outside of the vehicle on the driver's side. All right. They're having the conversation. Whatever happens, happens. He turns away. And that's when Ezra goes for the knife. Because sure, she could have reached the center console from the back seat of the vehicle, right? But it appears that Alex did attempt to try to fight her off. So that tells me that if she had been inside of if they had both been inside the vehicle when she reached for that knife, I don't think she would have gotten it. I think he would have taken off running, and I don't think that she would have been able to catch him. See, this is what I'm thinking, Le Chat Noir. That's my issue as well. My other issue is that's what I that's another good point. I think well, let's think about how he was facing though. Because most people, when they're going to move a person that's bigger than them, wouldn't they drag the person by their arms? So if that were the case, right, then he would actually be on the other, you know what I'm saying? Like he wouldn't, his feet would be out, not his head, right? Huh. It almost looks like she tried to maybe push him out of the front driver's seat into the back. Well, Max, I don't know if you heard this testimony, but Jason and Ezra were getting back together. They had spent some time together at motels, hotels for a little afternoon delight. So I think that Jason showed up because he thought he was going to bust them in the moment. I think he thought he was going to catch her. At the very least, he was going to have an opportunity to confront Alex about what Alex had said to the police when he was interviewed. But Ezra put the kibosh on that big time, which is why when Jason is testifying about what took place upstairs, and even Ezra, both of them, although I find Jason's testimony more credible than hers, obviously, but he did give the impression that when he walked in that bedroom, that there was tension and it was awkward. Now, I think I forgot what I was going to say because I got distracted by looking at the chat. So very Jen. I just I think that, see, this is the other thing that I find interesting, right? It isn't like Jason didn't know well before she actually went to Alex's house, right? That she was planning to go to Alex's house. There's an exchange about it. He talks to her about it, and she says that she has stuff that she wants to get back and stuff she wants to give back. And Jason says, "Well, why don't you mail it?" Or, you know what I mean? And I think that her responses to those suggestions are what actually gave Jason the heebie-jeebies. And then there's that, they see each other at the races, you know what I'm saying? And all of that. And Jason probably said something messed up to Ezra, which is what resulted in the fire in her eyes. Oh, yeah, Max, there was definitely a trust issue because Jason had confronted John about essaying Ezra. And it caused quite the kerfuffle. There was a whole dust up at Racy's. And he didn't trust her, which, I mean, can you blame him? I wouldn't trust her either. I just don't, I mean, I agree that the way that the prosecutor or the prosecution, well, I guess it'd be the prosecutor, presented the case during closing was well done. I think that he made it very clear that the physical evidence does not line up with Ezra's account of what occurred that day. And he is 100% correct. If all of, or the majority of the stabbing took place in that vehicle, especially the neck and the groin, that car would have a significant amount of pooling. There would be more blood in that vehicle than there was. And I think he did an excellent job also illustrating that she did not carve the word boy into her arm through her clothes as she testified, because none of the clothes had defects matching that. And she didn't do it through, you know, how button sleeves have that like hole over the wrist. It was up at the top of her it was in the middle of her dadgum arm, for Pete's sake. There's no way that she used that little hole to carve the word boy into her arm. It's ridiculous. Nothing that she says makes an ounce of sense. Nothing logical at all. No reasonable human being would ever hear that story and believe one kernel of it other than Alex and Ezra were there that day. So, anyway, exactly. There's the only way that could have happened is if she unbuttoned the button, the wrist at the wrist, and pushed her sleeve up. She's trying to testify that, you know, where the little button is at the bottom, you know, at the bottom of the shirt by your wrist, there's that little hole. That's what she's trying to say. She carved the word boy through. He had he was completely clothed. I don't see why not. Jason's not a victim, as far as I'm concerned. Good night, nonstop, Mom. Thanks for popping in, babe. Thanks for coming and chatting with us and bringing the spice. Yeah, she absolutely, now, allowed, yeah, she would be allowed to write him. But would it be a good idea? Hell no. I wouldn't. I mean, her attorneys would certainly advise her not to do that. Her attorneys would probably advise her to. I mean, I suppose she could write to Jason, right? But they would make it very clear that she could never, ever, ever discuss anything pertaining to the case, or really anything prior to the conviction. You know what I mean? But that's not where um so the way the medical examiner testified, the wounds go from the top all to the bottom. That's so everything that the first wounds occurred to her back, to his back and his head and his torso and his neck, and the stab wound to the groin is the last one of the last things that occurred. So I think that he fell, when after all of the other stab wounds, and I think that the groin, he wouldn't have to be on top of her. He could be on his back. And yes, he was fully clothed. I honestly think that this is just my opinion. I honestly think that she I don't think she thought that he was alive actually when she stabbed him in the groin. I think that that was the finishing touch to make her story seem more believable. That's what I think. Maybe she saw Sin City and she took his weapon. Remember that part? Yeah. I think that was part of the staging. I don't think that that wound that I don't think she intended that to be a contributor to his passing, to his death. I think that she did that as an afterthought, but it was very intentional. That's what I think. Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, that's why I'm saying that the initial wounds that occurred first were to the back of his body, to the back of his head, and to his back. And I think at that point is when he turned, and that's when she started coming at him from the front. But what I can't figure out, I have to go back and look at something before I say that. And I don't feel like doing that right now. I feel like, and maybe you guys will remember this. Exactly. That's what I think. Exactly. 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 But what I can't figure out is, or remember is, was he found with not wearing it? Yeah, he was. Now I remember, because it was outside of the car. His jacket was off. So who took his jacket off and why? Why would she do that? And why did she have the scarf on him? See, but I see what you're saying. Okay, so he was facing her, but my problem is the way that he is positioned in the car. His head and his arms are hanging out of the door, which means his feet, I guess that's I don't know. She put him in feet first. Because I'm gonna have to look at something. Hold on, give me just a sec. So I feel like wasn't he on his, I mean, for lack of a better word, he was face down towards the ground, like his face was facing the ground. So how did she, that's the part I can't wrap my brain around, is how he ended up in the car the way he did. I mean, yeah, yes, that's absolutely possible. But what did she, okay, that's the part that I'm having a trouble understanding, is how he ended up in the position he ended up inside of that car. That's the part I can't figure out, is how he ended up that way. Unless, no, that doesn't make sense either. Unless, in his attempt to get away from her, they ran around the back of the car, and then he crawled in through the front, or in through the passenger side back door, trying to get out of the driver's side back door, right? And Ezra is chasing him. Yeah. Trying to work it out in my brain. But I'm having a struggle. Like, she's chasing him, right? She's inflicted the initial, because it almost looks like he tried to crawl out through. Do you know what I mean? Like, he ran around, like they ran around the back. He did. She's chasing him, and then he crawls, through the back seat, entering on the passenger side, and too much damage was done. But then, even if, yeah, I can't figure it out. I mean, but anyway, I think I'm going to leave it there for tonight. And maybe in the 2.5 hour closing arguments done by the the defense, they'll explain that. So I'm going to bid you all a fond farewell, and I will meet you back here tomorrow night to finish up this case. Good night, you guys. Thanks everybody for coming and supporting. Thank you to the mods. You guys have all been great. And I will see y'all tomorrow night. Okay, bye. Good night, you guys.